The world is restructuring and Europe has to work harder in order to keep up. That's the message so far from here in Munich. It has the power, it just has to harness it. A strong defence industry is at the heart of that, as is accepting that their relationship with the US is changing. Estonia is on track to triple its defence spending by 2026, which is why I sat down with its defence minister to talk about what it all looks like. I want to ask you on the way here, the German foreign minister, he said, referring to the NATO alliance, that there was alienation and irritation by some of the recent comments from the US government and their representatives. And furthermore, that this event was an opportunity to come together to talk about the meaning of NATO. And I found it a bit strange because I thought, by now, shouldn't we know, or the allies know, what the meaning of NATO is?
Well, from my understanding, yes, we have a pretty good understanding, actually a very clear understanding what NATO stands for and what we have to do. So it's clear that we are standing for the peace and to keep the peace and to keep the sovereignty of the countries all around the alliance. And what we have to do is to give credible deterrence to our adversaries. The change what we have seen in last year is clear that US is saying that Europe has to do more. NATO is about the partnership, and to be honest, I have to agree here that NATO is about the partnership, and everybody has to do their fair share. So this is why the agreement we reached in The Hague to invest at least 5% to defense, from which 3.5 goes to core defense, is absolute necessary thing to do for the European countries. Estonia is there even above it, above 5% already starting this year. And we have to show to all of the allies that we are taking our defense seriously, and also to show that when one of the allies, naming US, is saying today that they have concerns about the Arctic security, then we have to respond to that. And just yesterday we announced that Arctic Centre will be launched. So this is exactly the right way to respond to that.
And I don't think anybody within the alliance argues with the message. Most of the countries are on board in the fact that yes, Europe does need to do more. Yes, it's coming too late. But there's a lot of talk about this event being about the way in which that occurs. And, perhaps the approach, and it's mentioned in this year's Munich Security Report, the approach from Washington has been very much, I think they described it as bulldozer politics, smashing everything down to the ground to then rebuild it up. Is that the right way to go about it?
I don't see that we are smashing everything down or like a bulldozer cleaning everything. So what I see is that we are redefining the role of Europe in NATO, and we are redefining it into the better way. So we are saying that yes, we are doing more. Germany is doing great, going to up to 150 billion in defense spendings in a couple of years. So it's a good result, good sign. For instance, when I take Estonia, then from the start or from the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Russia to Ukraine, we've tripled our defense spendings. So this is what we do, and of course, we have to redefine also NATO in that sense that when during the Cold War, when there was no war in Europe, European countries in NATO invested 3.5–4% into defense, then we didn't have any questions in the societies that is it okay or not. Today we see that the societies are arguing about that the far rights are saying that no, we don't need to invest, let's be friends with Russia. And we don't see that in every country that we are ready to invest so much into defense. But the reality is that when you want to keep the peace, when you want to keep the sovereignty, and when you want to keep these freedoms we all have, you have to deter your adversaries. And to deter them, the only way to do that is to have the credible deterrence. And to have the credible deterrence is to show the force that you are ready to defend whatever against every adversary.
But does redefine mean prepare, if you have to go it alone? Or even if you don't have to go it alone, even if the US says that it will be there, Emmanuel Macron has said, the French president, the only way forward is independence. Is that how Europe redefines
NATO has a treaty, Washington Treaty. Washington Treaty Article 3 says very clearly that every country has to do everything to defend itself. Article 4 talks about consultations, and Article 5 is the collective defense. So we are not going away from this treaty, nobody in Europe. And then we have to focus. So yes, we have been talking much about Article 5, but not so much about Article 3. And this has to be redefined, and this has to be the strong message from the Europeans to the Europeans and to the Americans that we are taking our defense seriously, we are investing more, and we do not hesitate to do that. So this has to be the redefining. Does that mean that every country can do it alone? Yes, it can, but we can do it better collectively.
We hear it time and time again, Europe has to prepare itself. But what does defence readiness look like for Estonia? What are the priorities for you?
As I said, we've tripled our defence spendings in absolute volumes. And from the percentage point of view, from 2% to 5.3% this year, and in coming years, even up to 6%. For us, that means that we have these capabilities, what we have agreed on last year in NATO, and capability targets were approved on 2nd of June last year. For us, that means that we have, of course, our defense plans, not only in NATO, but also in Estonia, and we need to have these capabilities. So we have a very clear planning path. We have a 10-year defense development plan, we have 4-year acquisition plan, and of course each year the government and the parliament is giving us the funds for that. So we have a very clear understanding what we need to do. We expect that each country has the same, and defense readiness comes from the capabilities, and these capabilities are agreed by everyone 2nd of June last year.
And part of that readiness, and there's a big push for it at the moment, is working better together. So joint procurement of weapons, joint industrial production, and a lot of that is underway at the moment. I want to ask you, where do you believe that Türkiye can help with this? Because obviously the future of Estonia and Türkiye's relationship, when it comes to defence, Türkiye is taking part in NATO's Baltic air policing in 2026. It's one of the largest defence procurement initiatives. So it seems like this is a partnership which potentially in the future could only get stronger.
Regarding our cooperation, yes, we've acquired armed vehicles from Türkiye. And we are in negotiation with some of the Turkish companies about the future cooperation. So definitely we believe that there is a role also for Turkey, not only in Estonian defense, but in European defense, as we have all the responsibility towards Turkey. Because as I said, so it doesn't matter when US is saying that they have a problem with Arctic and they need to all of us to invest more into the Arctic security, then looking at the 360 approach, then also in the southern part of NATO, we have challenges. So that means that we need to also look into there and have to be ready to defend every inch of Allied territory.
Are there any specific defence capability gaps that you believe that Türkiye could be particularly helpful in filling, for example?
Looking at the defense industry of Turkey, then you can see how much different weaponry they are producing already today. It doesn't matter, it is their defense, is it reconnaissance, is it tanks, howitzers. So Turkey is producing a lot. So now is also up to the Turkey to promote more their own weaponry, their own industry into the European market. So yes, I would say that there are no specific capabilities what you can say today, because Turkey is producing so much. But when I have to choose something, or if I have to choose something, then I would say that also Turkey as industry is very rapidly developing in the emerging technologies and disruptive technologies. So air defense, reconnaissance, all that, because old, good steel industry has always been strong in Turkey.
I want to ask you about the war in Ukraine, because Trump is pushing here for a June deadline to end the war. Are there any risks which come with pushing for such a strict deadline, do you believe, or is it simply a good thing to have an endpoint to push for?
Sometimes a deadline is a good thing to have, because this puts you into some kind of frame where to move. But on the other hand, you cannot talk about ending the war by any cause. We have to respect the Ukrainian nation and Ukrainian people, Ukrainian countrymen and leaders. Because they have to agree on the peace, nobody can say to Ukrainians that you have to take the peace.
But they say while they are so grateful for the support and they have received a huge amount of support from Europe, they would say that there is much more pressure that Europe can exert. It can bring more sanctions, it can provide more weapons. There is still a huge gap between what Europe is doing and what Europe can do.
Absolutely.
So how does it close that gap?
It's not only about Europe, it's also the United States, it's also about Türkiye. So we all can do more because we are standing for these values and principles. So in that sense, yes, Europe needs to do more and it can do more, but also we have to understand that when we talk about the sanctions, then we have 27 members in the European Union. For instance, Hungary and Hungarian leader Orban has been very vocal against Ukraine. So we have to understand that the European Union is also a union. So we have to find the compromise. Where is the limit? So if it would have been only about one country, then definitely the decisions would have been also stronger.
Arctic Century announced this week. We've had commitments from Sweden, we've had commitments from Denmark, I believe, as well. What else does defence of the Arctic and Arctic Century look like? Because the details at the moment are still vague.
And most or many of these details will be hidden, because we're talking about some of the capabilities which will not be seen at all. There will be a planning conference very soon in Copenhagen, and then the allies will come together and will dig into details, and then we will see what are the main needs in this region, and who will contribute with what will be the constellation on the water, what will be the constellation on the land and in air, so or underwater. So we will go through all the details, and then we can also say more publicly what will be the presence, what will be the view of the Arctic Century, and then definitely there are some of the things we will not talk about.
Minister, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.